The temperature begins dropping, the humidity abates, and the leaves on the trees slowly fade from a lush green to a bright orange hue. All telltale signs that summer has given way to fall. Soon, the nights will become longer, darker, and scarier. These are the telltale signs that another Halloween is upon us. If you've ever ridden Walt Disney's famous Haunted Mansion attraction, then you may recall the parting cautionary words of actor Paul Frees.
Beware of hitchhiking ghosts.
Yep, those are the ones. Parkgoers would have first heard that warning in August of 1969. By that time, the concept of the phantom hitchhiker was already an integral theme in many paranormal tales. The most famous of these, the tale of Chicago's Resurrection Mary, first entered the horror lexicon in the 1930s. However, the concept of a spiritual entity thumbing for a ride is far from unique. Huntington, West Virginia can lay claim to an entity very similar to Chicago's and almost as old. No one apparently remembers her name, so cab drivers and motorists alike have simply dubbed her the Fifth Street Hitchhiker. Huntington, West Virginia, population 47,000, is situated on the Ohio River at the point where the states of West Virginia, Kentucky, and Ohio come together. While today it is often referred to as the River City, it actually owes both its existence and name to the railroad. Hollis P. Huntington, founder of the Chesapeake and Ohio Railroad, christened the city in 1871. With easy access by rail, river, and road, Huntington soon grew into an impressive manufacturing and industrial center. At one point, Huntington was actually the largest city in the state of West Virginia. The railroad brought expansion and industry. With expansion and industry comes increased population and the need for a larger, ever-expanding infrastructure. Roadways began to snake their way out from the city's center, ensuring the growth of many suburban enclaves and the absorption of several nearby communities. By 1940, Huntington's population had swelled to an impressive 79,000. An expanding urban center brought with it the need for inter- and intra-urban transportation. In addition to an expansive streetcar line, Huntington and its outlying communities were well served by a number of commercial taxi services. While the passenger car remained the symbol of the American dream, many found it just as easy to part with some change and allow themselves to be chauffeured from point A to point B, with some friendly chatter and banter along the way. According to legend, it was during one of these routine treks from point A to point B that the tale of the hitchhiking ghost of Fifth Street was born. Huntington is situated in a valley, bound to the north by the Ohio River and to the south by an east-west running hill. Along its ridges, many streets and roadways of varying sizes and lengths ascend and descend this little ripple in the earth. One of these thoroughfares was, and still is, Fifth Street Road. Today it serves as a vital artery between the suburban West End and Interstate 64, which runs parallel to the hill on its southern side, one of only 3 roads that lead directly from the 6-lane superhighway to the city's population center. Long before cars roared by at 70 miles an hour, Fifth Street Road carried the designation of U.S. Highway No. 52, the main north-south link between Huntington and the southern coalfields. Fifth Street Road reaches its apex here, at the top of what became known simply as Fifth Street Hill. This seemingly unremarkable location became the genesis of Huntington's hitchhiking ghost. According to published accounts, the apparition first made its appearance sometime in 1941. However, it was during October of 1942 that the tale would truly blossom into an urban legend. The story goes something like this. On the cold, rainy night of October 28, 1942, a local cabbie named Wilson Carter was driving his hack along Fifth Street Road on his way back to Huntington. At around 4:30 a.m. or 4:45, as he crested Fifth Street Hill, he spied a woman flagging him down from the side of the road. Carter obliged, stopping his taxi and allowing the young lady into the back seat. From the outset, something about the unfortunate young woman seemed off. The night was bitterly cold, and a steady rain was falling, yet she was clad only in a white skirt and blouse. Finding her attire somewhat incongruous, Carter asked the young woman if she was not cold and why she had no jacket. With an almost dismissively calm voice, the woman replied,
"I haven't worn a coat for 9 or 10 years.
The enigmatic woman asked Carter to take her to the first house at the bottom of Fifth Street Hill on the northern side. Putting his reservations aside, Carter once again obliged. He started the meter and began a slow descent of the rain-soaked roadway. The young woman remained strangely quiet, not engaging in the type of friendly, idle chit-chat that most cabbies are accustomed to. She reportedly didn't even comment on the foul weather. The trip was not a long one, the fare totaling just 25 cents. Upon reaching the house the woman had referenced, Carter turned around to collect his fare, only to find that the quiet, oddly clad young woman was nowhere to be seen. Fearing the woman may have fainted or taken ill, Carter carefully examined every inch of the back seat and floor. Nothing. It was as if the hushed young woman had simply been there one moment and gone the next, not even pausing long enough to pay her fare. Carter had heard no door open or close, and both back seat windows were shut. Carter looked back up the hill he had just descended, but saw no one. More angry than frightened, Carter drove back to the taxi barn. There he grumbled to his dispatcher that some strange woman had just gypped him out of a 25-cent fare and then vanished without a trace. When Carter revealed where the unusual event had taken place, the dispatcher is said to have recalled that a similar incident had occurred in the same area during the previous year or years. A driver for a rival cab company named Estel Rice had picked up a woman on or near Fifth Street Hill, drove her a short distance to her destination, only to find her gone with the rain, as it were, leaving behind neither her fare nor a tip. The scenarios aligned so well that it was wont to send chills. A cold night, Fifth Street Hill, rain falling, a somewhat helpless-looking young woman in attire too light for the conditions, a trek to a house at the bottom of the hill, and then gone. No name, no age, no point of origin, and no payment. Initially, it was theorized that the drivers had fallen victim to some kind of racket, though they couldn't fathom why anyone would go to such bizarre lengths to cheat a cab company out of a 25-cent fare, or why they would risk being caught by repeating the con in the same location each time. On Friday, October 30th, the tale Wilson Carter told to his dispatcher appeared in Huntington's Herald Dispatch. This making of ink appears to have borne fruit, as other hacks and motorists alike came forward with eerily similar stories. A few even claimed to know who the hitchhiking woman was and why she plied her bizarre trade in the same location during specific conditions. The legend of the ethereal young woman's origins is suitably tragic. As the story goes, a family drove their young daughter down to Wayne County, just south of Huntington, so that she could be married. No date for the alleged incident is given, though some have estimated it to have been in the 1920s to early 30s. The couple and their daughter made the trip to Wayne County without incident, and the nuptials took place as planned. Later that evening, the same couple and their daughter drove the exact opposite route back into Huntington, traveling up 5th Street Hill on the southern side and then downhill on the northern side. Not long after cresting the hill, a light rain began to fall. The rain was just heavy enough to mix with the oil and petroleum traces left by other motor cars, but not heavy enough to wash it away. The end result was a road surface that more nearly resembled a skating rink. Near the foot of the hill, just as 5th Street crosses over Four-Pole Creek, something went terribly wrong. The car broke traction and turned turtle. The newly wedded bride was killed. One retelling of this tale makes it sound as though her home may have been very close to this bridge, though no address is ever given. This additional bit of lore states that one motorist who gave the young woman a ride was brave enough to knock at the door of the home she had directed him to. The motorist spoke with an elderly woman who related that the spirit was that of her deceased daughter, who returned to the site of her demise every 4 years. She usually appeared clad in a white wedding dress and would thumb a ride from passing motorists or cabs. She would ride silently until the vehicle reached the traffic light at the intersection of 5th Street Road and North Boulevard, where she would suddenly vanish in a puff of smoke. If you're familiar with the tale of Chicago's Resurrection Mary, then the particulars of this legend are likely to ring your chimes. So many elements are present in both. A mysterious woman in white out late, a cab driver or benevolent motorist, a given destination, and finally, a vanishing passenger. In Huntington's tale, the only elements absent are a large, sprawling cemetery and a name. Are these similarities proof that the legend is little more than folklore, or verification that a certain type of spirit or entity is more likely to manifest under specific circumstances? Such occurrences are generally referred to as residual hauntings. They are likened to a loop of film which inexplicably repeats the same scene over and over again. In the case of the spiritual entity, it too is bound up in this seemingly endless loop of events, reliving the last few minutes of its life in perpetuity. Some have equated such incidents to a form of purgatory, where someone or something is trapped in a limbo between one world and the next, no longer a part of their own time and limited in their connection to the present. In many instances, these presumed hauntings are often linked to some kind of tragedy or unexpected happening. The deceased is said to have departed this life with unfinished business, or at a time when they felt such a strong connection to a person, place, or thing that they simply refused to depart, even in death. If the specter in our story is indeed the ethereal form of a young woman whose life was taken in a tragic automobile accident mere hours after her betrothal, then it would certainly seem to meet the general prerequisites. But is there any real evidence that such a person existed or that such an event occurred? As with any mystery involving second- and third-hand accounts of unnatural occurrences, the proof of the pudding is not in the eating, but in the available facts, which, sadly, here are sorely lacking. Assuming for the moment that the base elements of the legend are true and that a woman was killed in an auto accident on 5th Street Road, the time period involved can be narrowed down at least somewhat by physical details. The legend speaks of the young bride and her family making the trek in an automobile, which almost certainly places the events after 1904 or 1905. The description of the accident itself is doubly telling, as it states that a buildup of petroleum substances on the road made it slippery. This phenomenon is only possible on a roadway which has been paved, not one comprised of dirt or gravel. As mentioned in a previous feature, the campaign to pull West Virginia out of the mud by improving its roadways was not initiated until after 1920, and even then it took many years to realize its ambitious goal. A check of several maps from the 1920s and 30s shows that 5th Street Road was not paved until sometime in the 1920s, although the area where the fatal accident is alleged to have occurred may have been improved sooner, given that it was a federal highway near to a concentrated population. The only firm dates we have to work with are given in the earliest known account, that of Wilson Carter, who didn't receive his 25-cent fare. According to the article, the incident occurred in the early morning hours of October 28, 1942. If we take his account as gospel, then the young woman's spirit claimed to have not worn a coat for 9 or 10 years, placing the date of her death around 1932 or 1933. Not yesterday, though far from ancient history. Local cabbies naturally circulated the tale amongst themselves. They soon came to detest any call which took them to 5th Street Hill after dark. One Good Samaritan, reportedly a West Virginia state trooper, also stopped to give the young lady a ride, only to have her vanish from his patrol car. The frightened trooper is said to have returned to his barracks and reported what had taken place. This apparently led to a round of laughter and snickering from his colleagues. Breaking with the supposed parameters of a residual haunting, the young bride is said to have suddenly manifested within the police barracks itself. Perhaps taking umbrage at the jocular reaction of the trooper's colleagues, the woman called out to them,
"I'll give you something to laugh about."
With this admonishment, the young bride is said to have walked directly through a wall and vanished again. The reaction of the state trooper's colleagues is not recorded. The published accounts also carry with them a word of caution. Should you find yourself on 5th Street Hill after dark and in the rain, it might be advisable to not ignore the young woman's beckoning. One motorist reportedly saw the specter and simply drove on. With no rhyme or reason, his car's engine inexplicably gave up the ghost, as it were, and came to a halt. A few seconds later, he observed the figure of a woman running down 5th Street Road past his car, almost as if she were chiding him for his lack of chivalry. As soon as the figure was out of sight, the car's engine roared back to life, presumably along with the driver's heart. As far as we know, Huntington's 5th Street Hitchhiker has not been seen for many years. Perhaps we can take this as a sign that the unfortunate young woman was finally able to reach her destination. Or is it possible that she is merely particular about whom she rides with and is simply waiting for the right person, one kind enough and brave enough to once again stop and offer her a lift? Well, it's getting late. It's not exactly ladylike. I tell you, what? Still on? Now that is frightening.
you.